Allegiance to the flag, States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, when I read the agenda, there was no topic under old business.
Right.
And
No, the first thing on here, and I printed out if you want, meeting minutes. First.
Oh, yeah, I get those. We shouldn't pass those by. Thank you.
I'll take one.
Yep. We gotta go Canadian first.
Okay, as soon as the dust settles.
No, I've got, three.
Before we do that, Mike, technically, we have to make a motion.
That's right.
Vote Danny in, so.
I'd like to make a motion that we have Dan Day voted in as a regular voting member tonight.
I second it.
And those in favor? It's unanimous. Dan's one of us.
Thank you, Chip.
Okay, now the review of the past minutes. 1, 2. I only missed 2 out of 3. I have no comments. Well, I don't have any comment anyway.
I'm just looking at who was here for some of them. For the first one, we're gonna have to hold off on because it was only Jonathan, Jenny, and Ann were here. And since only 2 of you are here now, do you have any comments on them? So that the May 6th one will hold off on. The June 3rd. Jonathan, Jenny, Ann, Neil, and Dan were here. So that one you could vote on.
And as everyone had a chance to read those or review them, is there any comments, additions?
I didn't have any.
So a motion would be in order for the June 3rd minutes.
Move a motion that we accept the June minutes as presented.
Second.
And a second, and all those in favor? Good, and July 1st. I must have attended that one.
Let me see. That one, everybody was there for July 1st, so.
I didn't see any issues with that.
I did.
I'll make a motion, we accept the July minutes as presented as well.
A second.
And without any discussion, though, raise your hand if you're in favor of that motion. Good.
I just want to just note on the June 3rd one, Wilder, I'm putting you down as a abstention because you were not at that meeting.
Correct.
So,
Works.
but otherwise, I've got the other 2. So those all passed. So
I just, the July 1st meeting,
yes,
you have a typo.
yes, where
It says wanders and it should be owners. Under B. Well, under the. It just says, both the property wonders that were present and the planning board members were open to pursuing them. Amendments. It should have been members instead of.
yep.
It's okay, they're in the, under new
yep.
business B, the last paragraph. In the July 1st meeting minutes.
Okay.
He accidentally put in the word wonders instead of members. It should have been property members instead of owners instead of wonders.
Okay. I can
That's just a
typo.
typo.
She'll deal with that. We'll put Linda in charge of straightening that out. Any other typos or errors?
No, John, no.
Okay, looking at the agenda then, under old business. There is none. And new business. We have. The luxury of clipper ship returning to the site. And with that.
Yes.
They'll give you a lot more detail, but this is just a sketch plan review for what will be a new application.
Yeah.
For the process you went through already, so.
Thank you. My name is Daniel McGuire and I'm with Sandy River Company. I have Doug Gardner, who's my business partner, is with North Country Associates.
Yep.
We have Andy Johnston, who's the civil engineer and engineering firm for our projects, plural. And we have Blaine Buck, who's the project manager extraordinaire with Cordier out of Camden. And just to refresh your memory a little bit,
Just do, you're not loud enough or?
They need a mic.
is this a mic? I'll try to speak up and everybody knows I can't hear anything, but my ears next to me will help me out. I hope. Please. We started, it seems like it's been years or just like yesterday that we were in front of you guys. It's been a while. And a lot has happened since we were here last time. The biggest thing that's happened is we continue to evaluate and assess what's needed in Lincoln County for senior care services. We work really closely with Lincoln Health. Our project that we envisioned was going to replace Cove's Edge Nursing Care Center with a new nursing care center on the Piper Mills Road site that we got approval for. Since then, interest rates went through the roof and the capital cost as a result of that became extremely expensive. Staffing became impossible and still is an extreme challenge everywhere. So those two factors made us reevaluate with Lincoln Health, and finally we decided it made sense just to keep Cove's Edge running as a nursing home. So they'll continue to do that. This project is a standalone project, meaning we're not actually doing it with Lincoln Health. We're not buying bed rights. The last project, we were actually buying the bed rights from Cove's Edge, moving them to the new project. In this case, we're just doing it from scratch, from the ground up, without their beds per se. So, and what we're planning on doing is doing what we've done a lot throughout the state of Maine as a memory care assisted living facility. It'll be pretty much the same design, but as you'll see in a few minutes, a shrunk design, the same 3 neighborhoods that we talked about the last time we were here, but a much smaller footprint. We're going to go roughly from about 74,000 square feet down to about 58,000 square feet. So it's a much smaller building, which gets the cost down, which is helpful. And we're going from 102 private bedrooms nursing to 70, all private bedrooms, assisted living memory care. In doing that, the staffing goes down, the parking spaces go down, the capital costs go down, and the project becomes much more doable for us at this point. So those are some of the reasons, and most important reason is the demand and need for good, high quality memory care services is huge everywhere in the country, particularly in Maine. We're such an aging state. I'm one of those people. And Lincoln County is no exception. So there's a real need for good quality memory care, assisted living services in the market area. What else can I say? North Country is our operating partner. Sandy River, as you may recall, is the developer. We take the lead role in the development side of things, and then we're still partners on the operating side as well. But North Country takes the leadership role in terms of operating both the past project as well as the new project that we're talking about. I think I've covered pretty much what I want to cover on my end. I think I'll pause, and if there's questions that you have of me, he will be my ears, hopefully. I'm happy to answer those questions, and then we'll get into more of the technical sketch plan review side of things and my friend to the left here helping us out. But is there any questions on anything that I've shared so far? No.
So do you have to get approval from the state for this or?
So the way it works is you need a certificate of need to do a licensed nursing home in the past project. You don't need that for residential care or assisted living. You need to get their approval because you need the rates for it. And that's the other thing. I'm glad you asked the question. This project still will take people that qualify for Medicaid under the main care program. So you need to get those rates approved for those people that would be coming into the building. But it's not a state approval process as onerous as a CON. A CON is a very, 6 month to a year process. So we don't have to do that. We still need to get DEP approval. We have filed our DEP applications as of about a month ago or so. So they have that. That's probably a 6 month process. So we expect that'll be approved pretty much at the beginning of the year, January timeframe.
Is that?
Pardon?
What are your DEP permits that you're?
DEP permit is site location
Application?
act permit, which we had to have on the last project, and you have to have on most any project that you're doing these days. So it's a pretty normal standard approval process with,
We've got a copy of that.
Yeah.
That I guess you,
yeah.
what you submitted to DEP, we have on file for, if you want to see it or if the public wants to see it.
Oh, recently.
Yes, what they submitted to DEP.
Yeah, so that piece has been done. We still need to wait for approval from DEP, but we've filed that. Our intent is to file our application pretty soon, and hopefully, I don't think it'll be the September meeting, but probably the October meeting when we can come back and begin to work through the approval process on the revised or amended project. Main care I talked about. Any other questions?
How many employees are you planning on having?
I don't know the top of my head.
Yeah, from an operational standpoint, this is one of the things that I was going to add. This project as an assisted living memory care at 70 beds makes it a much more manageable lift in terms of staffing. The staffing requirements will be probably about half of what the 102 bed nursing facility would be. I would envision we would have over a 24-hour period, 24/7, probably 60 to 65 employees.
About half of
time.
the project.
No, in total.
Yeah.
Covering the 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Yeah, it'll be about half of what would have been the number of staff required for the 102 bed.
Why is there such a reduction? Is it because it's not a medical facility?
It's a lower level of care than a nursing home, so it's an assisted living. The minimum staffing requirements are much lower than they would be in a nursing home, as well as the credentials required to work in an assisted living facility are also at a lower level. For example, we will only need a handful of RNs, registered nurses, versus 20 or so that we would have needed in the 102 bed nursing facility. It's just it's a lower level of care.
So is it assisted living or memory care, or
It's an assisted living facility that will specialize in memory care.
so is it comparable to like Riverside or the other memory care units in town that we have? We have one over.
It is Riverside. I don't know if they have main care beds at Riverside or not.
They do not have main care beds,
Yeah.
but that would be the level of care.
So what we're going to make sure is that this facility, it's a level, what is known, it's really a payment source, but it's level 4 PNMI facility when you look at main licensing requirements. And that allows you to take main care patients or residents. But it's very similar to Riverside.
Yeah. PNMI stands for private non-medical institution. That's what PNMI stands for.
So this is a non-medical institution.
That's the technical.
That's the language they use to identify it. It doesn't make particularly a lot of sense, but
and that's really related to the payers. To Daniel's point about main care eligible, that's what they use as the category, that PNMI category.
you actually have to do it under that category to get main care funding. If you don't want main care funding, you just want to be all private pay. I think it's level 2.
Yep, type
assisted
2,
living,
type 2.
type 2.
So
Why don't we look at their next presentation?
Come on over. I'll stay right here and let you do that.
One on easel? I think we've got one in the top here.
Right, otherwise
I'll do one there.
if everyone could see that.
That's over, guy. Yeah.
Super. You would think developers would bring their own.
What's that?
You'd think developers would bring their own.
Wow, it's the one thing I forgot. Usually I forget to plan.
One's got 6 in his car, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So I've got 2 plans that I can show you and talk you through what we're looking at. As Daniel said, for those with a good memory, this will all seem pretty familiar in that the shape of the building is very similar to the shape of the larger building that was proposed before. And where it's set on the site is also very similar because, as you'll probably appreciate when we did the site walk, this area of the site is the highest and flattest area. So what we're trying to do is site the building in the highest and flattest area of the site and then provide access around the building, both sides for fire access all the way to the far wings, parking out front here, receiving area and loading dock here, and a separate service road from the main entrance and parking area road. So as Daniel said, it's very similar layout to what was proposed before. In a nutshell, just about everything has shrunk by 1/3. So when I turn this over, I can show you the plan. The highlighted footprint and the red lines are what was previously approved. So this was the previous perimeter access road. These were the wings of the larger building, and the parking lot came way down with 105 spaces down here. So the building has shrunk by about 1/3. It's compressed inward towards the rear of the property and away from the neighborhood. The parking, similarly, 1 bay of parking has gone, and this is compressed in by 1/3. And that allows us to bring this service access road into the site further. So we preserve more of a buffer between the meadow area here and the view across the valley there. And importantly for us, one of the things that we would have loved to have done on the first plan, and we can now actually do on this plan, you may recall in the meadow area, there's one very big tree sitting in the middle there, and we can keep this road inside that and save that tree. We can also, of course, bring the proposed tree line inward on the site on this side by about 50 feet and outward and inward on the site on this side. So all in all, the visual impact is going to decrease. Everything is set back towards this side of the site. As a result of the decreased staffing, the traffic will decrease, the parking numbers will decrease. We're able to bring in the wetland impacts, so the wetland impacts are decreased by about 2,000 square feet as well. It gives us a bigger buffer at the front between Piper Mill Road and the parking, and everything basically squeezes inward. We've retained the same sort of approach to stormwater design. For those that are interested in the technical aspects of that. So it's still going to be the same kind of planted, very shallow detention basins that really don't look like detention basins. They're really bioretention cells with natural plantings all around. The other thing that it does on this side, you may recall, we had 2 lengths of retaining wall there to support the bank. They've both gone now. So this is, we're able to grade back down in here and just leave that as grass. It leaves more space for landscaping at the top of that bank here, where we're cutting into the trees a little bit. So everything shrinks down, the sewer flow goes down by a third, the water demand goes down by about a third. And I say everything just really shrinks inward while maintaining that same kind of layout that we had before. As Daniel said, we filed for the modification for the DEP permit on the basis of this, left basically the stormwater calculations are the only thing from a technical aspect that has changed. The sewer flow and the water, we still have those demand letters, ability to serve letters from the higher previous use. And of course, we'll go through the numbers on the traffic and those other technical issues as we move further forward. But that's a basic explanation of what we're doing. It's just like, let's say that's the best visualization of it. It's a smaller version of what was proposed before.
I think that was a wise tactic, you were shrinking it. Like from all sides,
And
obviously keeping it at the high point because.
it's the way it fits on the site. I mean, amongst other things, it reduces the impact and pulls everything away from the areas that you want to impact least. But it's just naturally the form of the site that it belongs back in this area, not over that way.
The big concern from the neighborhood, of course, is the views, the visual views from School Street.
Yep.
And I'm not, most of the neighbors were concerned of just about having this big brightly lit parking lot and institution in their backyard. So that's a concern. Just we're trying to like preserve that neighborhood as a residential neighborhood. And this is really a really different use from a residential neighborhood. So, you know, when you come up with landscaping plans or whatever.
I mean, I guess I'll,
You know,
I guess I'll say we're amending.
Big swaths of evergreens. you know.
Yes, and you'll recall the last go around, actually, one of the conditions of approval was just to come back with a little heavier landscaping plan there. And what reducing and what bringing this in enables us to do is where we had the two walls here that were kind of vertical and then it went down to the bank. This now enables us to grade gradually down there and it gives us a lot more room for landscaping in this area. And also it enables us to pull the parking down here and you'll see that's the proposed tree line there. So basically all the parking except the service area is going to be behind that tree line. So it's just that one wing that looks out towards the meadow area. And I say we are able now to save the tree, which is right about there as well, and bring this tree line inward as well.
Where is the creek? You know, the little tributary down.
Creek's right here.
It's right on the border.
Yeah, it's actually the property line.
I will say that we have approved and in place the permits to do the other project. So we're actually more or less amending that project and making this smaller and much better for the neighborhood than what is currently approved that we could build. So.
No, again, I think, you approached that with a lot of common sense. How else can I put it? I'm not beyond that. That's the level I have.
Yeah, well, I think you'll see it again. I would assume that you may want to go out and look at the site again as we did the last time. We can stake out the building as we did last time. And you'll just see how much further back that's moved on the property.
Yeah.
And because it flattens out here, moving it back, it really substantially decreases what you can see from the other side.
Also, this design and building is very, even though we can call it an institution if we want, it's very residential, and the exact building is in Brunswick at Brunswick Landing. So if you want to see this building actually as it is, this building is sitting in Brunswick.
I mean, this scale of this reduced scale building is in Brunswick.
It's exactly the same size.
Okay, so because one in Rockland is bigger, is the old.
That was the old nursing home size. So you could see, then you could compare the two.
Where's Brunswick Landing?
It's
the old air
it's the old
base.
Navy base. Yeah.
And if you're in Wells, it's the exact same building again.
one thing we've learned through workshops, et cetera. Individually as board members, we cannot do that kind of thing. If we want to do something, it has to be at least a quorum, you know, of the board. And
Field trip.
we'll have to, you know, think about those. I have a hard time getting out of Damariscotta because of the lake. So
Well, we can send you pictures as well. And and actually, if you go down there, you can see it on I think it shows up on the Google Street View at this point, doesn't it? So, you know,
That would be
you can
good.
virtually drive by and take a look.
So how many spaces is the new parking lot?
71,
There was
Okay,
what,
the other one was
104?
105.
116.
Oh, 116, is it? No, you're right, yeah, 119. I know it's just over one a bed on the old one.
What might be helpful too is if you could put somehow a stake that would identify that front part of the building that you could see from School Street, just to see where the building would sit back there,
Yep,
and maybe a height. You know, obviously you're not going over 40 feet, but whatever the height's gonna be, if there's some way that you could mark that, just so the people on School Street could see a real mark of the height and how far back it would sit, might be a good visual cue.
That'd be really good, because I mean, it would be nice, really, you would think, with all our computer expertise in this day and age, that we could just do a CAD, some sort of CAD graphic, and so you could understand what it really looked like from,
you know, I think we did that last time.
Yeah.
We took a couple of views from School Street.
yeah.
I agree somewhat, but I think if you can, you know, if we can put stakes in, and maybe what we've done in other places, we've actually put a balloon on the top of a piece of string, which will work if the weather's not bad. But you can see, but then you get your own eyes on it as
Right.
opposed to seeing a computer image, because they never quite seem to capture what you're trying to look at, you know.
And people are really just concerned about the lights, you know, and having that kind of development.
Yeah, and I say that's the advantage of being able to bring this back this side of the tree line, is that all the parking lot and virtually all the traffic that's coming and going is going to be hidden by that big tree line.
So now your service driveway is gonna be right across from the ambulance entrance, correct? Moves it up
Yes.
the
Yeah, it
street,
moves it
so
up the
paramount.
street, yeah, which again, it helps with the other thing. The only other concern we had here was there was a bit of a sight distance concern, and there's some vegetation that needed trimming down here, you might recall that. So that's gonna help with that, just backs it off a little bit.
Yeah.
Does the board have any other questions they'd like to pursue?
I still have a question about traffic coming out of High Street onto School Street. My driveway's the second one down, coming down towards here. This year it's been a zoo.
Yeah.
After everybody's here from away and they just don't know which way to go into town. It backs up downtown. So they come down, think they can take a left, and that backs everybody up this way. The trees on the corner, so you come up High Street, looking down towards the peninsula or down towards Bristol Road. That's private property right there. I don't care what the deal, you can't see far enough down there. Cause when I come out my driveway, I'm standing my truck on snows half the time because people are scooting so fast down School Street to get down this way. And you can't see far enough down with the property up on the end of High Street if you want to come out. So people that are going to go across to here or out, either way, yellow blinking light, something anywhere, or if we could trim those trees back, I don't know how that can happen on the other side of the road. But that it's really, when it's all said and done, you can see it's going to be scary for people to get out there. No, it really is.
It's a very high traffic at this point.
Yeah, it really is.
Much different than even when you applied, you know, it's the whole traffic pattern's really morphed in town.
You'd be surprised how little traffic actually comes out of this project compared to what's already there. You probably actually won't be noticeable. to
I
be
don't
honest
say
with
it will stop the project. I just want to make sure that it's safe.
Did we ever hear back from at one point, and this has nothing to do with these folks, but of DOT, what they were gonna do? At one point, there was gonna be a no left turn off School Street,
Oh, at school and Main Street.
correct?
Yeah, it didn't get implemented for weird reasons. They were gonna put bollards in and stop like left.
So
some
that's
left
not
turn.
happening,
I think it,
or just not in this DOT's fiscal
I think
year.
it was supposed to happen in the spring. It didn't happen for like weird logistical reasons. I'll have to check with Andy about if it is going to happen eventually still.
And the other point that Danny's talking about is coming off High Street, looking to the right. There's gotta be a right of way distance from the center of that road that we can take those trees regardless of whose property they're on, if it's a danger, and it is. It's a danger pulling out there, and that should be something that the town looks into in a right of way from so many feet from the center line that they clear those trees out of there.
You're talking about where High and
High in school, right across from,
Yeah.
just a little south of where the entrance to this Piper Mill Road is.
Yeah, well,
It
Piper
kinda
Mill's
just
like-
sits off it a little bit.
yeah, it's like basically right across.
Correct. Correct, but if you come to that intersection and you look right towards Bristol.
Yeah, down school, okay.
Correct. There's gotta be something that we can do there that's within the right of way that can make that a safer intersection.
What I do just at my driveway, looking left and right. And then I'm older now and I'm not as quick, but unless I see nobody coming, I don't dart out there. Because I can stick the nose out, and especially on High Street, and I use that a lot. You get out, you look one way, and you look, and all of a sudden there's a car there, because that's fine.
Yeah.
These people wanna get, I swear, everybody uptown works down there, and everybody down there works uptown. But then you got the summer tourists and people from away that are here for 4 months. It's very, very busy.
Did you have any interventions or anything? Were you addressing that intersection at all at Piper Mill and school?
No, I think we looked at it, and I think actually the one that we looked at a little harder, and this is my recollection, is the Bristol Road and School Street intersection. Made some recommendations there because I think the striping had gone basically to all intents and purposes. And so you couldn't see where the stop bar was, and people were just scooting right through there. So I think there was some recommended. I'll look that up again and just go through what the recommendations were. And I do recall at the other end of School Street, the DOT were pretty hot and heavy on that being no left turn road, but you can never tell what they are and aren't going to do. And it's unfortunate because all the feedback we got last time around was that was a dead certain that was going in. So I don't know what
Yeah.
happened in the
There was
meeting.
also
Got
talk
up to
about
implementation
stop
and then.
on School Street,
I've heard a lot of stuff
You know,
over the years.
and that would certainly slow down traffic
At High Street and
at
school?
High Street and school.
I think that was from the traffic engineer, that it was a recommendation. I don't think it was part of their project necessarily, that there was gonna be, but it was gonna be a full-way stop at that intersection.
Yeah.
And that was just
Big
a
difference.
thrown out there recommendation
Yeah.
or a possible recommendation.
That certainly wouldn't hurt.
So,
Especially if you're having
so
issues.
you all, when the original plan, weren't proposing any changes or any interventions at School Street and High. Were you doing anything with the road between School Street and this project?
No, but there was going to be the addition of a sidewalk.
Okay.
Right down to School Street, which was going to tie in. I think the town had a bigger plan of eventually doing a sidewalk along School Street. So we had included this sidewalk that goes all the way down from the frontage of the property all the way down to the intersection of School Street.
So do you own all that land down to?
It's actually Piper Mill Road is actually owned by this property.
Right.
So it's not a public street.
Is there a road association?
No, man.
Informal.
And is that just because we're
My-
running into that?
Yeah, my understanding is the sewer district plows it because they need to get to the end of it, but there's no formal agreement.
Do you have more information or?
We just wanted to come in really and just present what the changes were going to be and get some feedback and see, if there's anything that you folks had that we could address on the way through. And we hear the comment on landscaping,
Well, just,
being careful about.
mixed. evergreen trees, you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's the kind of landscaping, not just a couple ginkgos.
Yep.
You know, you need,
Yeah, and we heard that loud and clear last time around, and I know we had proposed a landscape buffer here, and I think it was predominantly hardwood, and I think we got the feedback that more evergreens would.
and you know, if you're ever down in Booth Bay and you go into the dump road that's right before the Booth Bay Country Club there. Right when you turn up the dump road and you're along that property, there's great example of a landscaped buffer, you know, with evergreen trees, evergreen
Cedars,
plantings of all
yeah.
sorts. It's really.
I'll
good
take a
example.
look.
Money wasn't a.
Well, I know, but it's so effective, it works, you know.
There's no money was no project.
Okay, so, yeah, appreciate the presentation and look forward to, bringing back your project and.
That'll probably be Octoberish.
That's, so I did want to ask, are you expecting to submit like an amendment to the original project, or is this a new application? How are you thinking about handling that?
We've assumed it was amending the old application. There's really, I'm not sure it matters. So if it matters to you, I'd like to know about it because we'll treat it one way or the other.
That I hadn't thought about it. Just if you're assuming that you're gonna amend, then I'll look and see if there's any issues with that. I imagine that does seem to me like it would make sense.
It seems like it's a whole new project though. I mean, in a sense, because it's a different footprint. I mean, it's the same, and it's a different type of facility.
Maybe, and that's what I'll look at. At the end of the day, I'm not sure
I think
it
it's gonna take
matters. I
longer.
think
It's the same amount of,
No, we just envisioned it would be a modification because it's the way typically with site permits, they're related to the use of the site. And the DEP permit is an amendment of the existing permit. So it's because it really, I mean, if you look at the two plans, you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference in a lot of respects. From a site plan perspective, I mean, we can explain about what the use is and the technicality of the use. But from a site plan perspective, this is a very similar looking building with very similar looking site features and very similar looking layout. And
so it's the same height and the same design,
Yeah.
really.
it really is just shrunk down by 30%.
And I think that's something that Michael can easily determine,
Yeah.
whether it's amendment or a new
Yeah,
one with
see
the
if there's
information that
anything-
we've gotten tonight.
You just-
And he's the one that makes the final call on that anyway, so,
We certainly don't want to.
well, yes,
you.
with guidance.
Yeah, right.
We don't want to extinguish our existing permit.
That's what I figured, but I didn't know if there was, some other reason where you're saying, no, we want to go that new application route. But it sounds like if you're just thinking this is going to be an amendment, then that's fine. That seems to make sense to me without having dug into it. So.
Yeah, first thought, it sounds like an amendment to me.
Well.
Thank you.
When was their project approved? It was in 2023.
I think originally
It was approved in, I want to say January 11th. We extended it by a year. We extended the permit by a year. So the permit is good until January of next year.
All right.
If we wanted to just keep doing what we were doing. And lots of times we end up changing the footprint a little bit along the way. And when you do that, it's usually always just an amendment to the existing site plan. It's not, revisiting the whole thing.
And you said you're thinking you're going to submit for the October meeting. Is that?
I think so, because it'd be a little tight, frankly, to try and get it in for the September meeting. We don't want to rush anything. We want to give everyone plenty of time. And
Yeah.
you folks may want, when we submit, to schedule a site walk and those things. And because we got the DEP amendment, and you probably all know how long that's going to take, it's going to take longer than you folks.
So why don't we schedule a site walk then? It can be early September.
Maybe.
Or
Maybe we want to. I guess we could. I mean, might make sense to do once we get the application.
That makes sense, like, once we get it, then.
okay,
But it sounds like, and not that we're gonna hold, this isn't gonna be official, but it sounds like you do want to do a site visit.
I think it'd be
I think it'd be a good idea.
very
Okay,
good.
makes sense. Okay, good. That's good. Yeah, we've got a lot of other stuff for September, so I appreciate that you're not trying to submit for that. I don't, no, the only other thing was the lighting. I imagine like just meeting like dark sky.
They're all full cut off.
That if you do that, I imagine it should be
Yeah.
pretty.
He's gonna be tight to drive by Freeport High School, if I recall.
Yes, yes, the fixtures have come a long, long way.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to accomplish that now.
That'll. I imagine if neighbors come out asking, that's a good place to start that conversation is if you're meeting those standards.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next meeting.
If you all do come up with anything, issues of concern that you want to share with them so that they can address it before they, look, we can share it with them in that way that gives them the opportunity to adjust. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate their LID stormwater.
Did they have a good?
Yeah, they did. And what it was, they call them detention ponds, but they were vegetated swales kind of. They were kind of like bio gardens or whatever rain gardens.
Yeah. Those are, I'm a fan of them. It's hard to like kind of prod developers to do them unless they want to. It's hard to like kind of regulate it. But if you can get a developer that recognizes the value.
Well, they want to do it because they at one point they owned that whole piece. They had that big piece of property and then they divided the property.
Mhm.
So they're squishing this into half the property.
Yeah.
And so they want to keep all the water drainage on that piece of property, not going into the other property.
Yeah. I
that's
think
why-
it's,
But we haven't really seen development around here use that kind of
right.
approach, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's in the ordinance, but it's hard to kind of
Make people do it.
enforce it because it does take some
They read
creativity.
the ordinance, actually, that leapt out at them and they decided to incorporate it. It's kind of.
Yeah. It's nice when
That was good.
applicants read the ordinance.
Did they say the twin to this is at the landing in Brunswick? Is that? what they
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what they said.
Yeah.
And there was another one, but
And down
Yeah,
in
one
Wells.
well.
in Wells, yeah.
But
We
in,
have to remember as board members, if we opt to go there, we can't bring any information back based on that visit. That's
Right.
inappropriate.
Yeah.
Right.
That's,
If the board decides and wants to go.
Yeah.
No, I just thought if I
Right.
wanted to drive by the thing or something like that, see
we're
what-
not allowed to drive by it.
You can drive by it, but you
No.
can't like bring ideas of it
Only
back here to
can't
this
bring
one.
it back and
Right.
say, I think you should change this because when I went to Brunswick, I saw.
Right.
it's like,
I know exactly
yeah.
what you're talking about, yeah.
It's like anything that the board discusses or that the board considers needs to almost like be evidence. And so
It's like a
so
site
it's
visit.
not so much that you can't look at it and consider it, it's that we have to figure out how we bring that in here. And what I was gonna suggest is like you all can go look at it, but what might make sense so that you can kind of have that discussion is we can ask them to provide
Say,
They
in the
offer-
packet, if they
Yeah.
can provide photos
Some
of that, we can
details
see
and-
the same thing and then freely talk about it.
right, exactly. And that way you can, oh yeah, well, when I was there, I did see, it's a one-story building that looks like this. And in the packet, if you're not bringing new information, you're just, you've gotten a different perspective on it. So I
Would you make
think,
sure that when they submit their packet, that we all get a copy of the packet, that they provide
hard copies,
the hard copies?
yeah, you want,
Don't we all?
Yeah.
No, remember that's something that Isabel changed, that all hard copies are completely optional now
well,
for plans.
think in the,
And so,
That's bias, huh?
I,
Jeez,
What?
they slipped that bias.
well,
We
She-
always
she-
like the hard copies.
She just
Yeah.
thought she was being, efficient.
Yeah, that's,
And we don't need it for every little project, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for something that's complex like this and that has a lot of colored maps and stuff,
yeah,
it's just nice to have them do it. We don't want to burden our office and it should be their expense and their trouble, not our trouble.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. No, if you want hard copies, I can ask them. And just generally, if you want hard copies, the more advanced notice you give me, the better, because I don't want to waste the town's, like, that's something we can have the developers provide.
Right, that's.
So if you want it, let me know, because then it saves me and everybody here time, and the developers will provide it, and it is
Right.
free, and
Yeah.
usually they have nice quality stuff. So if you want it, I'm happy to. I also just don't want to, like, I've got boxes of plans in my office right now because, they need to I think the ordinance says like 10 copies, 10 hard copies, and then,
Well, it used to be, the ordinance has now changed.
right,
So,
so.
so I don't know. I mean, we don't need it for every,
Well, I can
But
ask
like for
for,
review meetings like this is the time to decide that this project, yes, we want to see those in.
yeah. And I imagine especially the maps, the graphics are it's the hard, okay. I will, I made a note that you do want hard copies, so. Okay, I don't want to cut off the conversation, but we have a resident here from Neeson Lane, the back meadow, so,
okay.
which is.
That is under, that's 6A, that's the reference, is that correct, or is that a?
No, this was, so, the last time we spoke, I got the general sense that you all were open to pursuing amending the site plan that was approved for the kind of rear subdivision, so that it doesn't necessarily need to be paved. Still need to meet the standards of the subdivision ordinance, which I was looking at. Paving's not in there. It really just comes down to like how wide the roadway is, how wide the right of way is, which is all, I'm going to double check it, but is all
Conforming.
There's one issue with shoulders, and it's more like what's on the plan versus what is on the ground. We need to just confirm, but I'm assuming it shouldn't be, probably won't, I don't think it's going to be an issue. And then the roundabout turnaround at the end rather than the hammerhead. So what what I did since then, and what I'm hoping to pursue here, is I've been putting together a draft request. I've been writing it, but this is technically going to have to come from property owners. They're going to have to essentially sign it and say, like, yes, this is from them. I'm putting it together, putting all the language in there. If they want to change it, but it's their application, so they can change it. We can change it. I'm just want to be as helpful as possible. So I put that together, and I will give you a copy of that when I get to it. And I believe I shared a copy with you, and I have not had a chance to revisit it. When I say this is a draft, it's a rough draft.
We know.
So this is the same copy that I made of it, so.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, I imagine there's going to need to be revisions before this gets there, but it basically just goes in, and I'm hoping to just amend the notice of decision and the finding of facts that came from the original approval. Ideally, we don't need to change the plan that is at the Registry of Deeds. I'm gonna have to check that, because if that has to happen, then we're gonna have to get an engineer involved, and then it becomes a whole thing that who's paying for what. So that's where that is at. The one sticking point that I had was getting in touch with all of the residents. I sent a letter out 2 weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, asking anybody who gets that letter to get in touch with the office, give me their contact information so that we can get on the same page. I hadn't heard from anybody. Today I spoke with one of the property owners, with Rick Pazzo, I believe, who did have numbers for various neighbors. So I believe I should be able to get in touch with at least one person that's listed on every property. So that hopefully I will talk with all of them, and that's all listed at the end of this. I think there's essentially 8 property owners, or 8 groups of property owners. So if I can get in touch with all of them and I don't have any issue with this, we can move forward. I also did check with MMA, Maine Municipal Association, and for some legal guidance on, like, if one person doesn't chime in, or, doesn't want to participate, like, what do we need to consider here? They basically made it sound like that won't be an issue. I'm still a little hesitant. I would very much like to have all of the residents that are in this subdivision on board. So that's what I need to work on. But ideally, if you look this over and it looks good to you, I'm going to go through it again, share it with all the residents. If we can, I'd like to have it before the board, like kind of have this application submitted so that the board could vote on it potentially at the next meeting. But if you've got any issues, let me know so we can fix them. I'm going to say the same thing to the residents. If they find any issues, please let me know so we can fix them.
It looks good.
I think a lot of this is, it's all issues on paper. It's hopefully not like, oh, there's something that needs to be rebuilt or something like that. But the issue is, like, the town knows there's an issue, and it says somewhere in black and white, like, the town's not allowed to issue building permits until this is, built to a certain way. So we can't just ignore that now, as much as it seems silly. So that's why it's all paperwork that I just want to get sorted out so we can.
So you're hoping that, like, at the next meeting, the residents will use this to submit to.
Yeah,
or be submitted to the board.
Yeah, or that I'll be able to get them to sign off on having this submitted on their behalf.
So
If you have, I don't know if you have any thoughts now, you just. Okay.
I just, you spoke to Rick Pozo.
Do that today. I did. Yeah.
So I'm just.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't seem, the one question he had was about what was required for paving on the front subdivision. I didn't find anything that really specified, here's what needs to be paved for that front subdivision, what it may have been. I don't know what was approved. There may have been, but it just hasn't been memorialized anywhere that I've found yet. Which that was in 2005. So
it was part of the original. I don't think it was originally.
I don't believe
think
it
it
was
was-
in,
I think it was
any
paid later.
approval document.
yeah. And so this is where it's like, in the original approval for the rear subdivision, if you remember, it says it needs to be paved to the standards that were approved, and also it says it needs to be paved similarly to the front
Right.
part of the road, which it's weird because those are kind of two different things, and we don't really have anywhere that says this is how the front of the front road had to be paved.
So we're just taking it all out. Okay.
So I'm gonna go through the subdivision ordinance again and make sure, but it really has a lot of squishy language in terms of, like, it has to be built with this material and this. It doesn't really say anything like that. All it really says is 18-foot kind of like drivable travelway, which is what's on the approved subdivision plan. And then 50-foot right of way, which I'm sure if you go out there, you're not gonna be able to see what the right of way is, because I don't know where the pins are. Maybe you might be able to see that, but either way, that's more of an on paper thing again. So I'm gonna check that, but Rick seemed fine with this. There was one other thing. with the front of the subdivision, taking on the back subdivision, road association, all of that. It's not in the decision. I think it was in the application. I believe it's on the deeds, but that's more of a private, like the property owners. It's not the town. I'm going to make sure, but that's not something the town, I don't think needs to or wants to get involved in enforcing. You need to take over that subdivision, or it is already in there. It does say that, and I don't know if this has happened or not, like after the sale of the fourth lot, that the developer was going to basically transfer I don't know, some rights of the rear subdivision road to the front subdivision road association. If that has happened or hasn't happened, it's not the town's, that's residents. So I just want to, part of me wants to just get the town out of this so that we can let the property owners do whatever the property owners kind of want to do. I mean, not anything they want to do, but they can build their houses and,
Are houses actually being held up right now?
I don't know of any applications. I don't know if anybody hasn't submitted. Some, yes.
Couple built, and then we got the letter, so ever since the letter came out in May, no one has been asking for building permits because we can't, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that I didn't, we don't have any, we have not received any permits, but yeah, doesn't mean that there's not someone who's waiting for this to be resolved. Which if we can get resolved next month, that will be great.
That seems in order to me.
I'm hoping so.
Sequential.
Yeah. You never know. So there can always be a rogue property owner who comes in and said, no, I don't want this. And so, but so far this is the path forward that I'm trying to pursue. And if you all seem to think that it makes sense, then that's good, because you're the ones that get to decide. That's all I've got on that. Yeah, unless you have something, that's okay. Yeah, no, that's it. And if you have any thoughts, please feel free. Yeah, good. Okay, good. I'm trying, so. Okay, so that's what's going on with that. I don't want to, this is not my meeting, but that's all I got. So I'm happy to move on if that's good with everybody.
You're talking about adjourning?
No, I wanted to.
Nice try.
You can do that.
The only other thing we can, if I would, land use or LD 2030, I sent you a clean version of like, if it's adopted and everything, what it's going to look like, and then a red line version, which is a mess, but
Was that in the last email?
it wasn't, yes,
Was
I think
it
it was like the
in-
last thing I sent to you all. I can resend it so that you have it, but
Did you make any big changes?
there's some significant changes, and I was having this conversation with Andy trying to explain to him basically what's going on in there. And there's a lot that's changing. There's a lot of stuff in there. Most of it is all like administrative and kind of cleaning things up. So it's not really changing what people are allowed to do or not allowed to do. It's like I added, since the last meeting, I added definitions and cleaned up like what uses are called, so that when you go and look at what oh, can I do a certain thing? You can go look, instead of like, academic, it was like a paragraph of all of these things. It just called it academic, and then moved all of that to a definition that hopefully is like, here's what an academic use is. So that is important that you will look and say, okay, yeah, these definitions make sense. I think, I went through, I tried to find good definitions from other ordinances from, around the country that made sense. They're hopefully fairly practical. So those definitions are the big thing. And then there's other moving, and we discussed like kind of breaking some stuff out so that the requirements around lots are in a section about requirements for lots, and the requirements around uses are in a section for the requirements for uses. So it's not that there's there's not a ton of new regulations in there. It's just I've moved them and hopefully like split some stuff apart so that it's like there's this regulation and this regulation, where before it was just one sentence and it wasn't really. So hopefully it's more clear, even if it's a little bit more.
It's much clearer, much easier
Okay.
to read.
Good.
Looks
That's
much better.
I'm very happy to hear that. That's what I was going for.
I like it.
And then a lot like most of the changes that actually affect like what people are and aren't allowed to do, is from LD 2003, which so we've got affordable housing in there, which mostly we just kind of define what it is and kind of spell out the state required like 2.5 times density, which is, again, that's the state. If you're doing an affordable housing project that meets, or development that meets that definition for affordable housing development, you can do 2.5 times whatever the density is that's allowed. So that's in there. There's also essentially you can do like anything that we're not calling it single family housing anymore. We're calling it, I think, just like residence use. You can essentially have 4 units anywhere that you're allowed to do like a residence, or what we would have called single family house. You can have up to 4 units in there, but you still have to meet density requirements. So if you're in rural, like you still can only have like, I think it's 1 unit for every 2 acres. So if you have 8 acres, you can have 4 units in your single family house, or in your house and above your garage. You could have a little 4 unit compound thing. So there's that, and then there's multifamily, which is anything that's like 4 or more. So like multifamily, I don't think we allow multifamily in rural, so you can't really have more than 4 units on a property in rural, even if you have 20 acres. So you couldn't have a 20 unit building. I don't think. I'm pretty sure that you're not allowed to do multifamily in rural. But then like in the downtown, you could do multifamily. So you could build you could build a 1 unit anywhere you want, but you could also build a 5, or I don't know if you could do 20. Can't remember what the upper limit is. I think it's all density. Anyway, so there's that. And then there's ADUs, which is in there, depending on that. You get like, I think you can get 2 ADUs essentially. But that also gets into like, if you're on sewer or septic, can't get around septic rules. I think in the rural, you're only allowed to get like 1 ADU. So if you're on like an 1.5 acres in a rural area, well, if you're on 2, let's say you're on 2 acres, 2.5 acres, you're allowed 1 unit by kind of right. You can do an ADU there, assuming you can plumb it with septic. You can't do a 3rd unit there. So, but all that's LG 2003. It seems complicated. It's because it is, and this is just what the state says we have to do. So long story short, the stuff that's changing what you are and aren't allowed to do, mostly LD 2003. Everything else is mostly just cleaning up what's already there, trying to make it clear. So if you have questions. And the reason this is all important is we were supposed to have this all adopted by July 1st. We obviously didn't do that. So the sooner we can do that, the better. If you're all good, I'd like to share it with the select board and make sure they don't have any, big issues with it, and get a public hearing scheduled. Hopefully, sir. I don't know. It depends what we actually get for our meeting in September, as far as applications. So it may be a separate meeting, may not be. Tell you what, this is, let me.
You're asking, do we want to have the public hearing at the September meeting?
At the September meeting, and I will tell you, there's a couple of things. One, before we get into like, if we're going to do scheduling, we've got the comprehensive plan, which I need to get back on top. If we are still on schedule for, Ann and Jenny, potentially we need to have a public hearing. I mean, we wanted maybe September, maybe October. We have to figure out whether or not it's all done. Marianne, and anybody else who was wanted to do wordsmithing, that hopefully will be wrapping up. And then I got to see whether or not Adam is putting it all back in InDesign. We don't need to get into all the details here. Sorry.
I think Mary's planning on having it all wrapped up by
She
the
said
middle of,
mid-August.
of the month.
Middle of the month. So I'll find out. We may need to have a public hearing on that September, October. I don't know. We've got this project, Clipper Ship, which maybe isn't going to need a public. Well, no, it'll probably need a public hearing, but it's going to need. That's not going to be a quick meeting if it's even one meeting. And then we've got this LD 2003 amendments. So those are like the three big things in addition to anything that's going to come in.
So Flipper Ship is October.
That's what they said. So
It seems that in September we should have,
do you want to try and do the, I think, so the September meeting is not September, it's not the first Monday because that's Labor Day. It's the 9th, so it's gonna be the second. So if you want, we could schedule a public hearing on LD 2003. I think the select board has a meeting on Wednesday, so I can kind of check in with them. I talked with Andy about it today. If you're all on board with doing it on the 9th, we can do it on the 9th.
And you have to have one before you send it to the selectmen.
We don't have to, well, we do have to have it before they do any official action on it. I also kind of want to make sure that they're cool with, I don't want to move something forward and then have them go through the whole public hearing thing here and then have them be like,
Well,
no.
that's why I was asking maybe if there's somehow that they can get it and then we hold the public hearing after they've had a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
And
so when are they gonna look at it?
I'm hopeful I can share it with them on Wednesday. And, Amy's take was they were basically like, they're going to say, do your public hearing if you're all good with moving forward with it. If the planning board's good with moving forward with it, they'll be good with moving forward with it. But I also, if they have any changes that we want to make in the meantime, I'd like to give them that opportunity. So
I think we have to have a hearing on it in September, if you're gonna have a vote on it in November.
the LD 2003, well, we're not going to do it. I don't think we're going to do referendum, or we're not going to do the secret ballot, whatever. We'll just do it at a special town meeting.
Okay.
If that's how you want to do it, that was kind of my assumption.
Comprehensive plan, is it all?
That I imagine it won't be one meeting just because I feel like that's a lot to, I mean,
Not for the public hearing, I'm saying
for the special town meeting.
Special town meeting.
I my thinking is that's still a lot because maybe it'll draw more people out and we'll get people to show up and actually engage, which wouldn't be bad. My thinking is that's a lot to ask people for one meeting, and because a lot to discuss. But maybe that's not what people feel like. That's fine.
In the past, haven't we approved comprehensive plans by townwide vote?
yeah, but it's either at regular meeting or a special meeting.
It wasn't at a regular election then. It
I don't,
wasn't.
I don't ever remember one being at a regular election. I think it's either been a annual town meeting or a special town meeting.
We always have the attendance at special town meeting that we think we should have compared to,
Never.
No, I don't think they have a regular town meeting.
Right.
They think they should have, so.
we might have 6 people.
You could get 6 people who really hate everything,
Right.
We-
you know,
Yeah.
which is what other towns around here have found.
Yeah. Well, and so I know the conversation with the select board and my thinking for LD 2003 is similar, is to do it like at a floor vote at a special town meeting gives people opportunity to like come and have conversation and say, yeah, I support this, I don't support that, and say, and then vote on it, versus if you put it on the ballot, it's if people don't know what they're talking about or don't know what it is, they can't ask questions, they can't, say, now we are going to have a public hearing, but I mean, my perspective is more opportunity for conversation is always better, but that's not my decision. So,
Well, like Ann said, I echo, it's cleaner, easier to follow.
And I think with that, I personally think that we could share it with the selectmen and then have a public hearing at our September meeting. And be ready to move on it after that.
Okay,
That's just my opinion.
I agree.
I think we should try to do it.
try and do that. That's, and I can put it to them and they can say, you know, here's the timeline that we'll follow. But if you're all ready for a public hearing at the September meeting, then I'll get ready to notice and do that.
Because
Good
realistically, you've got to, if you get it to them Wednesday, and if they get it back and you're trying to do it 2 weeks out, you got to have it advertised next to last week in August. To make it
Right.
Binding. So I mean, we only got a week and a half to make it all pull together. So I think we
Yeah.
need to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So probably what's going to happen is if you're all good with, I'll probably notice it. Just because that's the conversation I had with Andy, and that way it's noticed. And if the select board says, you know, never mind, like we can always cancel it. But he was pretty confident that they're going to say, yes, go ahead and have the planning board public hearing, because the select board will still has to go through their process and have their hearing and their vote. So it's not like,
At least they would get a chance to look at it and bring anything back to you before
Right.
we had that. So that's
yeah.
important.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I will do. We'll plan on doing a public hearing for LD 2003 at the September meeting, which is great. I'll let you know once I got to get back together with the comprehensive plan committee to discuss the comprehensive plan scheduling, but that's coming as well. Oh, and then I have a couple other things that I just wanted to share with you. Neil, you asked about the Libby camp.
Yep.
So I checked in with George today, and what I had shared with you is I think generally accurate. George has been working with them, kind of going back and forth, and has been to the site several times. And in his view, all the work they're doing is all related to getting into compliance, which is, I believe they've already taken up, their septic system was in the wrong place. It was too close to the water. It was not in the location that it was approved for. And it got complicated. I think that the location that Stan had approved the septic system to be in now had a building on it, which Stan also, I think, had approved to be there. So that was like, you can't put the septic now underneath the building. So George worked with them and got a spot for them to put the septic that does meet shoreland. So that's fine. The building that I believe that Stan had, so that's the work they've been doing. They basically removed the new septic system that was too close to the water, and are hopefully in the process of putting it where it needs to be. George, as the plumbing inspector, is working with them on that. He's also, once they get that done, I think they're going to hook that up to what the new building is, so that the new septic is going to, the new septic is going to service the new building. The old camp currently, I think, is tied to a tank, like a septic tank, with either no leach field or non-functional leach field. George is working on that. We'll see what direction that goes in. The septic system that they are putting in cannot serve both buildings, so they're going to have to figure out.
Well, and I think originally the old building wasn't even supposed to be there. A small section of it maybe, but that was my whole point. And I didn't go out. I just, obviously people have found out that I'm on the planning board, and then, hey,
and they're letting
and nail me down. But I think what little bit I remember of it was that wasn't supposed to be there, and the new building was going to be in a different location. So I just don't want to see something get added on and see twice the structure that's supposed to be there, that's not even supposed to be. Because I think, if I remember correctly, they were going to take either end off, and there was only going to be a 14 by 14 or something along those lines. But I guess I can't ask any more than if George is looking at it and he's the guy to go to. That's not the planning board's view anymore, but we need to make sure that it's being done in compliance.
Can I ask this planning board one question? Because I've been tiptoeing through that association because I'm there. And I have to be very careful as a planning board member, without anybody here representing the Libby's. What I recollect down there when we stood there that day,
Is this down at Paradise Pond,
yes.
Muddy Pond? So it's the one we did the site visit to.
Okay, yeah, this is what I'm getting at, and I want to ask one question. When Bob said he laid out this other cottage that has been built there now,
Mhm.
okay? And somebody said, oh, good, because I'll be able to keep this cottage and I'll have that one too. Bob's exact words, and I'll never forget them. No, that has to go. Because we're giving you on a postage stamp size lot on a lake that's 100 feet deep or whatever, you can't keep that camp. It's still there, still functioning, and it's being added, it's being modernized or whatever. It's not coming down, it's gonna stay.
So that's my point, Mike. So that's why I
Yeah.
think we're gonna go back and we gotta find
Gone, not
the
even-
minutes, the site visit minutes, and then the approval minutes after that. And that was all 2019,
Yeah, I remember.
somewhere
that.
around there.
And it's been a little while since I looked at it, but that's it got unfortunately complicated. And obviously George and I weren't here, so we're like trying to put some stuff together. I know you all probably remember because you were involved with it. I think part of the issue is that it came to the planning board. The planning boards didn't approve anything. I think it got kind of partway through, and then they said, never mind, we're going to go this other direction. And then after that, I think that Stan approved this building where the planning board had said, yes, you can put a septic field or some version, something like that. And so there's all, it's not consistent what, like, no, you're not allowed to do this. Yes, you're allowed to do it. It was never consistent. So that's what George and I had to go back and try and piece together, well, what had been approved. And there's certain things that I don't think that if it came to the town today, wouldn't have been approved. I don't know.
We didn't approve anything.
We didn't approve.
No,
Hey, I have to,
I know the planning board didn't. I think that
this is.
code enforcement did.
I've had Stan. I've worked with him for years as a builder. I have his number. I called him up. I'm getting exactly the opposite from Stan as what I'm getting from George now. Stan said that they could, if they wanted to move that building, they wanted to put a foundation under the old building. He said, you're gonna be below the level of the camp or of the lake water and so forth. Not gonna happen. You can't do that. They wanted to have storage underneath of it and so forth. You may have heard that night with me when we were at that site review, okay? He didn't give them permission to do anything. They never got permission to move it or to have any foundation under it. We were approached by everything that was supposed to be taken care of. My God, when we allowed her to do that camp that's there now, the brand new one. I mean, look at the size of the lot, guys.
But did we approve?
Well, that's what I'm asking, because I don't remember.
There was,
Not approved.
no, and this is the problem, is that it's not, that essentially they went around the planning board. They came to the planning board didn't approve things. Right. And so this is,
So if we
this
didn't
is
approve it, how can we continue to let them do it?
because I don't know if it was Stan, they.
Is there a building permit or anything like that?
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that, like, so this is where I'm like, oh, well, I look at the planning board, the track with the planning board kind of just stops at a certain point of like, okay, well, we still need this, that, the next thing. It's like, great, that it all makes sense. Like up to that point, but then it just stops. And then from there's an approval for septic and there's an approval for that other building. And it's like,
I can understand why the development, I hate to get in front of what you say. I have people calling me just because I'm there with a small cottage and I'm a planning board member. We've got a spot that doesn't have any power down there, no well, okay? And they've got a septic system. And I think people are hoping that other camp doesn't get tied in with whatever in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even be there.
right.
What, the new camp?
The old
Yeah,
one.
there shouldn't,
There's a brand new one down there.
yeah. There shouldn't have been a second building, but that's the problem is we found something that says, yeah, you can build this other building. So we're like, so we're like, okay, all right, so we can't.
And there's nothing in there, even though that at the time, well, whoever issued this permit, that it didn't come through us, that it missed that step and it has to come back through us?
There's not a lot of record. So this is like, I'm
Well,
trying
no,
to
there doesn't have to be a lot other than you're saying that there's a building permit that was issued. So somebody approved something,
Mhm.
but it should have gone through the planning board because of where it sits, and it didn't.
No, so
the full
that's,
extent.
so I think what was coming to the planning board was the moving of that original camp. And expanding that. And that all, and this other thing was like whether or not that these other approvals should have gone through the planning board, they didn't. There was an approval, and it gets into like this, like, well, on behalf of the town, it was approved, and it's like, well, so it's hard for us now to say, I can't go and tell them no, you can't do that. Like, well, we got something that said that we could.
So they put in a septic system.
So they put in a septic system that was approved. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. We found an approval for a septic design. That is not what was built. So that's why George went and said, you got to take this out. A, it's too close, and it's also not what was designed and approved. The problem is that what was approved is now underneath this other building that also somehow was approved. So,
give me a break.
so that's why, so George basically said, you can't have that septic system. So they have taken it out. That was never authorized to be in there. The building was authorized to be there. And so now that's why George is working with them to get this septic system, which they are allowed to have a septic system on the site for a single family, for a single dwelling. And that's what, so they're not going to be able to have, I don't think, this stuff is code enforcement authority with the plumbing. But my understanding is George doesn't see any way that they're going to be able to put they're not going to be able to tie two buildings onto the septic.
They're just going to use one building as a bunkhouse, I'm sure.
Well, which doesn't, there's not accommodations for that. Like bunkhouse isn't a thing in the zoning. So I know that like that was talked about, oh, can we have a bunkhouse? Like it's
There's gonna be
no,
there's
because
gonna
that's
be
not a
two
thing.
camps down there.
So that's, well, we're going through because that's what we want to make sure that doesn't happen, because you're not allowed to have two camps on there. And so
That's gonna be two.
Are there checks and
There are two
balances in
camps
place
there.
now to prevent this from happening in the future? Because I thought we had it before, but clearly we've missed
You know what
something.
we tried to have before, this was probably before I even became an alternate, that our code enforcement officers came to on all water non-conforming whatevers. Then they were there. They were at the meeting. Somebody wanted to present something like that. I mean, this is on something this big on a pond. And now we've got all kinds of structures on it. And one's not coming down. That Bob told that person that day. No, that one has to come down because we've given you this. We did approve a brand new.
Did you find any minutes from that site visit?
from the site visit, yes, some minutes from that. But and this is, look, I've gone through this and I'm not trying to like, make excuses for this should happen. There's just unfortunately there's not a lot written down. So when you're asking about checks and balances, my attitude is if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So if we didn't find approvals for this, then there weren't approvals. Unfortunately, or
From the planning board.
from our perspective, from what I found is there are two approvals. So we can't now go and say, oh, well, we did, the town on behalf, the town said you can do this, whether it's planning board, code enforcement, so you're allowed to do this. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, it's, oh, no, now you're not allowed to do that. The approvals were not thorough. So it's like, yeah, it's here, it says, you're allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And so, now we can try and be as very narrow as possible and say, okay, you got something that says you're allowed to do a thing. Well, we're only going to allow you to do that because it shouldn't have been allowed. You shouldn't have been allowed to do that.
thought all projects within the shoreland zone had to come before the planning board. Is that not true?
No, no, not everything.
I mean, all buildings.
I'll have to look off the top of my head. I don't think that's. I'll have to look.
Because
This is.
usually people want to build a deck, do anything. We're out there, measuring.
Yeah.
From
Look
the-
at Kobe and Gale. They wanted to add that on because that's so close to the swamp. They had to come to us just to add that little piece on because it was in the shoreline zoning.
Yeah.
That was site plan with Kobe and Gale that came here.
Yeah, but I thought it was,
Zoning.
Yeah.
I thought it was shoreline zoning is why he was.
So what I can tell you is I am happy to. When we go through and look, first of all, what I can tell you is shoreline zoning is not the most clear ordinance. Okay, so, but if there's ever a question and when we're talking about the checks and balances, right now, there is unfortunately not like a hard and fast mechanism that prevents this from happening. What I can tell you is that George and I are in very regular communication. So if there's ever a question, George and I do say, does this need to go to planning board? And we both, if there's ever a question, George is more than happy to send things to the planning board. It is very hard. This particular situation, there's not great documentation of what was approved, when, how, who. So I think that George and I both share a similar perspective of like, there shouldn't be two houses on this. There shouldn't be two units. There shouldn't be, the septic needs to, nothing should be built if it wasn't approved. Like I said, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. That is the attitude that we're taking. The catches here are that if we find a permit application that says, yeah, you can build this. Okay. But then, so we did go out, George did go out and measure and was like, no, this septic is too close. This couldn't be where it was. How could this be approved? So now we're getting them, making sure that what they do build is approved. It is also kind of in the process of playing out, because at some point, if they want to try and use that original camp, they will be in violation. That's more of opinion. That's not, I don't want to speak out of turn. It's not my decision whether or not they're in violation. It's code enforcement officer. So that's what we're trying to do. And I think George has issued violations so that when it comes time to start enforcing, the town does have that option. So we're working on it. The conversation I checked with George today, because I wanted to be able to follow up with you. All of the work that they are doing is around getting this into compliance with the approvals, with only the approvals that they've received so far. How to get that.
I guess.
I believe, yeah, at least the septic and there is a new septic approved. Like there wasn't a septic was approved. The design didn't work, but either way, they need a septic, and they are allowed to put a septic on there. So George worked with them to put it in the right place.
Right.
The issue with the two buildings is a weird. I don't really know how that happened. If it was clear, it should have been clear that if you're going to build a second building, you're not allowed to build it until the other one comes down, or it's not allowed to be occupied unless the other one comes down. There should have been some. I don't think there was anything tied. That unfortunately, that was not done that way.
The best thing I'm gonna tell them, and I hate to say this to anybody that's in that development. They're gonna call me, and I'm just gonna say the town messed up, live with it, because that's where we are, guys.
Yeah, I think, and
Pretty
that's
much, right?
yeah. I think
Pissed
that
me
is.
off, I'll tell you that.
I'm
I'm done for the night. I'm out.
Okay.
So I'm trying to kind of do, I guess maybe do like some damage control on it and not.
And it's tough that we have to do damage control on something like this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
That's not where we are.
well, so that's, this is unfortunately not the only issue where, with Neeson Lane, right? It's like some of the stuff, if we had written it down differently, we could have been in a better situation, but
We didn't.
we can only go forward.
Correct.
So that's what I'm working on, and I will continue to work with George on that.
It's in bad condition, that camp.
Yeah, and so they're going to be limited with what investments they can make into that building.
You can just make is there any way you can say you're not allowed to update it or improve it?
I don't, they'll be able to maintain it as far as tying, like, they're not gonna be able to have plumbing in there. Because, I mean, I shouldn't say they're not allowed to. I don't see how they'll be able to have plumbing in there, or they're gonna have to kind of pick which building. They get one building, one unit that they're gonna be able to service with a septic system. I don't see how they're gonna be able to do that.
Do they have plumbing in there now?
And this is the other, is right now, I think it's tied into a
Or discharge?
no, it's like a tank, which I don't know if I don't know all the details of whether or not there's actually a leach field or if it's just and so George is working on, basically, like, I think he said, have it pumped. If it fills up with water or what, whatever, he's going to see, is it a failed system? But in order to find that out, you got to go through the steps. So he's going through that. We'll see if, this is hard, and this is, I've been working with George to go through this. It's like, you got to go through the steps so that when it comes time to say, like, now you have to do this, the town can say, well, we wrote this letter, we did this, it's all of the, like, kind of monotonous stuff that, like, I am like, well, this is why we have to do it this way, because, and some of it's correct applicants too, is so that, like, you got something that says you're allowed to do this, so that they're protected. They come back and, well, someone said I could do it, and unfortunately someone said you could do it in an official capacity. So now to add a little more fun on that and kind of everything, George has let me know that he is probably stepping down as code enforcement officer for Damariscotta and Newcastle. He did say he'll be able to stay on as the plumbing inspector, until we can find someone to replace him in that capacity. But I just wanted to let you know that that's happening. So yeah, and that's, he's very good. And
Because he was having too much fun? Does he need, what is the?
Yeah, he has, and I don't know all the details. He has like 9 jobs, and so I thanked him for not telling or putting his notice in before I left for vacation, so I didn't have to stress about that, and not putting his notice in, like the Monday after I had left, so that I come back and it was today, and it's basically like, Friday was my last day. So that's, and I don't know. I still have to talk with Andy, and we're gonna have to deal with the same thing in Newcastle and figure out that. But so he is still going to be around in plumbing, and so he's not gone yet, but he will be. That change is coming there, which is too bad.
What's the time frame?
I think, like, technically the end of this week is the end of his second week of notice, so we'll have to figure out how we're going to do, like, building permit review and the, like, CEO reviews.
Yeah.
So we're gonna work on that. To the back of my own.
How's that plate your viewers filling up?
Yeah.
Hope it was a good vacation.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, now I'm refreshed. I can jump back in and really get this comprehensive plan knocked out. And George came in first thing this morning. Was like, I'm leaving. I was like, why? What are you, so, so Ledgewood Court, I've spoken with them. I have a call with them on Wednesday. They said, they're trying to figure out how to make their project work. One of the things they may need to do is remove the age restriction. So it's going to be basically the same project, still going to be affordable. It just may not be 55 plus. And that isn't because it has to do with I don't know exactly. They're combining the properties with with the existing Ledgewood Court, and because that's not age restricted, they can't just like have part of a project be age restricted for, I don't know exactly what the details are, but it's has something to do with like anti-discrimination, basically. So they may come in, I have to look and see what the original approval was for and that, but I have a conversation with them on Wednesday. But I just want to give you a heads up if what may change. And it's all because they're trying to get funding for it. So that, oh, and then we're very, very close to getting the TIF kind of finished through with DECD. So I think that's everything that I've got. Yeah.
Does Ledgewood, do they need our approval if they change the ages?
That's what I'm not sure.
It doesn't seem like that's,
I think I remember hearing it,
Project.
but I don't think, I certainly didn't weigh that in when I
it's
was.
not really in our
approving it, so,
ordinances or
it was-
anything.
No,
It doesn't
no.
really affect,
And that's what,
we approved the building
yeah, well, and the use.
and the use as a, apartments.
But,
Right.
but that's not changing. per se.
No, and exactly, and that's why what I said to the applicant was, I'm not sure this is going to need like an amendment or anything. It may just be a letter saying the planning board knows, and yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I don't
fine.
think they need to come before us.
So that may just, it may be that, but I just want to look and see how it was approved so that we make sure that it's all, T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But then that was just, that was a heads up, yeah, okay, so that's all the planning stuff I've got for now, I think.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I'd like to make
Yeah,
a
I'm
motion.
open, yeah, I'm open to a motion and you can make your.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
A second.
Those in favor? We are gone.